You're listening to The Authenticity Show, where you get to eavesdrop on great conversations about health, creativity, and the quest for excellence. Your hosts are Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Our guest today is Marc Allen. Marc Allen is an author, publisher, and the CEO of New World Library, which has published many best-selling books such as Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain and The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Marc also appears in a documentary film called Enlightenment, which also features our very own Carlos Casados. Marc is also a musician, and we're going to get to hear some of his music today, which is really cool. And just a wonderful, deep, warm, loving, amazing person. And this conversation is deep and wonderful, and you are in for a treat. So here we go.
So Marc Allen, I first met you on the documentary, and I'm so glad that you are here with us today on Authenticity Show.
I'm so glad to be here too. I love that documentary. That's where I met you, and was very impressed with what you said. I loved what you said. I loved how you talked about rewriting your software, rewriting your story, and talking a bit about neuro-linguistic programming, about which I know almost nothing, but I see we've gotten to the same place from completely different paths and using completely different vocabularies, but we've had the same path in a way.
That was really, really remarkable. We were kind of saying the same essential stuff. I mean,
yes,
what you said was so poetic though too, and I loved that. I loved. I don't remember the name of that poem, but I've heard it over and over again, and it rings back in my memory as it's just a positive thing. You know, did you write that poem?
I wrote that poem. I remember it just spilled out. I wrote it as fast as I could possibly write it. In a bar. I was heading into a bar, and these words started. When I was like a quarter block from the bar, these words started going through my head, and I ran into the bar and I grabbed a napkin, and I started writing, and I filled about 10 napkins.
Oh my goodness!
Wow!
It just downloaded.
Huh?
The pre-drink inspiration.
Yeah. Well, I think it's amazing that happened on your way to the bar, not on your way out of the bar.
Out of the bar, right? I know.
Yeah. Wow.
There was a bar right near my office. It was end of the day. I was strolling in there, and suddenly, we are the creation of the forces of life, an eternal blend of ecstasy and strife, living as long as the universe stays, which is forever through the galaxy's nights and days. From the Big Bang's beginning to the black hole's destruction is but a day in the life of our cosmic construction. We'll live forever where the stuff of stars, ever changing, ever growing, born into this life, born into that, changing this form for the one that comes next, an eternal part of an eternal creation, a quintessential piece of divine revelation.
Ooh.
That's how it ended.
Wow. Wow. Holy smokes.
That's gorgeous.
Wow. You know, I always know I'm hearing something special when I get goosebumps.
Oh.
Yep.
So there you go.
That means
Wow.
Your brain is very special.
Yeah. Wow. So Marc, where does something like that come from? Is that you? Is that something else? What is that?
You know where it comes from? In my early 20s, I did some Zen meditation, though I did not have the discipline to continue it. But I found that place where you turn off all thought and you just sit in silence and you become receptive. And that's where it comes from. It's the same thing Eckhart Tolle is talking about over and over in The Power of Now. It's just presence, being in presence, being not active, receptive. In a way, being in your female side rather than your male side is one way you could say it. Being just open and receptive and quiet. And that's where it all comes from, all the best writing. That's definitely where all my music comes from, any poetry that happens. I just listen. So it really doesn't feel like I've written it, although, my hand is sitting there. My best song, I dreamed. I literally, before I went to bed, I walked by my piano and I thought, I've never done anything in F minor. And I sat down and suddenly it played this song, just beginning to end in F minor. Oh, that's interesting. Then I went to sleep and I heard a verse sung in my ear to that song in my dream. And I woke up and a voice said, write it down. And I said, I'll do it in the morning. And it said, no, you won't remember a thing in the morning. Write it down. So I got up and sleepily and sloppily wrote down the verse, went back to bed, heard a second verse, got up, went back to sleep. A third verse was sung in my ear. Finally, there were 8 verses in the song.
Wow.
And it's called Sweet Surrender. My favorite line in there is, blessed is our separateness, for we're divided for love's sake in order to be united again.
Blessed is our separateness, for we're divided for love's sake in order to be united again. I pray to deeply realize sweet surrender. I pray to have the heart and eyes to see that good and bad and right and wrong and pain and bliss and all are all branches of the very same tree. They're all one in their real identity. They're all one in truth's infinity.
And I woke up in the morning then and vaguely remembered getting up and writing. I wouldn't have remembered a word, not a word in the morning. But there it was, 8 verses all scrawled out.
Wow.
So-
And you knew what key it was in. That helps.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I had just written the music to it. That was so odd.
I mean, that's pretty profound to have something seize you like that and need to get out, need to get expressed. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm in awe of it myself. And I think, everybody has the capability, but it's true. The best stuff happens when we quit trying to do it and quit trying to make it happen. Quit trying to force any writing or anything and just really relax, let go, be quiet and receptive and let it come.
That's so true. You were talking about some Zen meditation, and one of the most valuable things that I've gotten from studying the Zen approach is just how simple it is. And the idea, like what you're describing right now, is what is the purpose of sitting in meditation? The purpose of sitting in meditation is to sit in meditation. That's it. Meditation is the point of meditation. It's like not to try to become enlightened, not to try to gain something, but just to sit and practice being, It's like that's that idea of just stop, be still, let go, practice being. Every flower that I see outside my window right now is just practicing being a flower.
The practice is the practice.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Love it.
I did do about 5.5 months of real formal Zen training in my early 20s. And then I left with the same feelings so many students of Zen have, saying, oh, I'm not disciplined enough. I'm not meditating enough to really get it. Because it's so disciplined. The Japanese said, I think the whole culture is so disciplined. And I'm not. And then, thank God, in 99, I discovered the power of now and Eckhart Tolle. And he brings Zen to America and the world, the entire world, without the meditation.
Mm.
And he was even asked about his meditation, and he said, well, don't let your meditation interfere with your meditation.
Mm.
And
Perfect.
that was a Zen koan. And I thought, and he really meant that. Don't let your formal meditation practice interfere with every moment of your life, because every moment is your meditation. And the more you're just being, as he puts it, the more you're just feeling your presence without a thought. That's it. You finally become grounded in your presence and being, he says. Become grounded in that space without a thought. And that's exactly what Zen is talking about with that word samadhi. They're always teaching samadhi. It just means sitting. And then finally, the masters are able to act and do and live in total samadhi without a thought.
Yeah.
I could hear his that funny little laugh that he does when he
Yeah. I can picture those little arms getting all animated and doing something. I love it. Wow.
It's so funny. He reminds me of the true Zen master. I met two in my early 20s. I met Suzuki Roshi at the San Francisco Zen Center. And then this wonderful man I lived with for 5.5 months named Katsuki Sekada. He wrote a brilliant book, 2 brilliant books later on Zen. But they all have the same quality as Eckhart. They have this childlike, just sort of joy in every moment, every little thing. You know, eating a brownie when we weren't supposed to eat between meals, and we were sneaking food. And along comes Mr. Sekada, and other students said, we're breaking the rules. I offered, Mr. Sekada, would you like a brownie? He said, oh, sure. And he's breaking the rules, too.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You know, that reminds me of Carlos and I share a wonderful friend, our friend Greg Zimmerman, right, Carlos?
Yep.
And Greg tells me a story that just always kind of warms my heart. He was in Hawaii, and it was a really hot day, and he's standing out on the curb in front of a McDonald's, and this Buddhist monk walks by with his robes and everything, and he says the monk stops and he looks at McDonald's, and he could tell he's hesitating for a minute. Should I? Shouldn't I? And the monk just looks determined, and he goes inside McDonald's, and he comes out a few minutes later with a big giant Coke. Just he was so happy, and he just walked on his way. You know,
Coke is it.
yeah. I think of that every time I hear the song Carlos from The Doors. You know, where the monk bought lunch.
Yes,
he bought a little. You know,
from the Soft Parade.
Yeah, from Soft Parade. That's right. Yeah. That's right. I love it. Yeah. Enlightened beings are people too, right? Yeah.
Mark, you mentioned being in this receptive mode, and I just wanted to ask you about that, because I think there are quite a lot of people who don't know how to tell the difference between when they're being receptive or not. They're just sort of going moment to moment. And how is it that you discovered going into that space?
I know the Zen meditation helped.
Mm-hmm.
So many people, their first experience with meditation, they realize, oh my God, my mind is just going. A lot of people give up. They're thinking they'll never be able to change that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can change that if you stay with it, maybe count breaths or something, or stay with it. Eventually, you can, especially like just as you exhale, you can let thought go for just a moment at first. You can let it go. I do remember I was writing music before I did the Zen. It really, I think, deepened and improved. Definitely my poetry and writing deepened and improved after Zen. I have one, I don't even know if I should tell that. I have one totally embarrassing story about writing music before Zen. Right after I dropped out of college because I got in this theater company where I wrote music and acted. And so it was my dream job. And I remember we were doing this anti-war play, A Man's a Man, Bertolt Brecht, and we adapted it to Vietnam. It was during the Vietnam era.
Bertolt
And
Brecht.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was. We took a Brecht play and adapted it to Vietnam. It was called A Man's a Man. It was hilarious. We played it in parks. We played it in prisons. And it was about this Vietnamese guy who goes out to get a fish and he ends up being drafted. It was sort of comic and sort of sad, and definitely this powerful anti-war statement where he turns into a killing machine monster and all. And there was one scene set in a Vietnamese whorehouse. And I had to write a song for it. And I had the lyrics, "In my pleasure palace, you can eat Eve's apple, get drunk on the god's wine, sleep in the bed of kings." It's just wonderful lyrics.
Wow.
And I was struggling with the song. I was there alone at the theater, struggling. I couldn't get the right song. I knew it had minor ninths. If you know music, it had minor ninths. I love minor ninths. And I could not get the song. And I was pacing up and down, and this is where it gets totally embarrassing. I've never told this story to anybody, but I had to go to the bathroom then. I suddenly had to have a major bowel movement. I went and sat in the bathroom and just relaxed as you do. And as I was just relaxing, all thought went, and I just, this was a wonderful, healthy, great feeling, it feels really good. Suddenly, in that, there was a moment of quiet, and the song was just there. All this, the music came.
You needed to make
chords, the melodies. It all came in that, and I realized, that's what it took. It took stopping, trying, just relaxing, letting go, being in the moment. And then suddenly the whole song was there.
Oh, that is perfect.
That's great. Wow.
That's awesome. I have to admit, I've had some of my best thoughts on, in the toilet. So
yeah, we're quiet. That it turned out to be an amazing experience. That song. One of the lines was, "Oh, there's peace and quiet. Everything is made soft. All the colors of women ever seen in the world." And the women in the company sang it in negligee, and we did it in prisons, and they would wander down through the prisoners, all men sitting very close together in benches. And it was the most not one man ever touched one of the women. They were just there in total silence and awe as the women brushed right by them singing all the colors of women ever seen in the world. Oh, it was an amazing bit of theater.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mark, because you have a history of performing, right? I have only a minor history in performing, but that stillness that we're talking about, where creativity comes from, I always found that to be with me every time I was performing. So in the middle of action, there is this calm centeredness where I could feel I'm not sure where it's coming from, just the performance is coming from there all the time. So there's so much action and chaos and movement. And I remember I did a comedy. It was a British farce that was on stage, and it was slamming doors and jumping over tables and misidentities and all the stuff happening. It was chaos, but there was always this calm, still pool inside of me. I've shared this with Carlos. I remember the night of the first performance, I was off stage waiting to hear my cue to come on. And I remember thinking, why do I feel so calm? Aren't I supposed to feel nervous? And I didn't. I felt calm. And I just brought that with me on stage, and it stayed. All 18 performances, it stayed.
You were great.
Wow.
Thanks. Yeah. But it was just something about that. I learned a lesson in that moment, that there is a stillness even in that intense chaos of judgment. This audience is going to judge my performance. You know what I mean? It's and it's there.
There's a funny connection between what you mentioned, Mark, and what Satch mentioned earlier about the soft parade. And that is, they talk about how many degrees of separation from anything, right?
Oh, yeah.
Bertolt Brecht was extremely important to Jim Morrison, who was obviously the lead singer of The Doors, who sang the song that you were bringing up right before it.
Yeah.
Super into Brecht. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Cool.
So, Mark, you've had a strong performance-based background, music, poetry, um, acting, or writing, things like that. Tell us more about you, because I'd love to get to know you better.
I was born with something unusual. I just knew that I needed to do what I loved to do, and that I would do something extraordinary. That's all I knew. But I remember graduating from high school when some of my friends, some of my best friends, I remember, like, went to work for their dads and got into early marriages and jobs. And I remember thinking, in fact, I confronted one of my best friends. I remember at our graduation, I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "Oh, I'll go work for my dad's furnace filter business." And if he would have said, "I want to work for my dad's furnace filter business, that's so cool, to be self-employed," then I would have said, "Great." But the way he said it, he did not have any passion for it at all. And I said to him, "This is your life. You do what do you love? What do you want to do? Don't do what your dad wants you to do. You can't find happiness and fulfillment that way." I didn't say all those words. I didn't have all those words at the time, but that's sure what I felt.
Wow.
And so after high school, I became a theater major in college, much to my dad's chagrin. He literally said, "You only work for a corporation for 40 hours. You still got another 40 hours to be creative." He said, "Brother, I'd gone into business." And I remember thinking, "No, Dad, if I did a job I did not like for 40 hours a week, I would need 40 hours to recover." I just knew myself, And so I was a theater major, and then I got that job in a theater writing music. I played in bands too in high school, and through college I had bands, and so I knew it was important to do what I loved, and that's been something I just encourage people. Oh, do what you love, do what you love. What took me about 15 years, from 20 to 35, was to figure out how to be successful doing what I loved.
Yeah.
I had no idea through my 20s how to make any money doing what I loved, because I had such horrible beliefs about money. Once I realized this in my early 30s, I kept telling myself, "I'm a fool with money. I don't understand it. It's beyond me. It's way too complicated." And even dealing with my emotions, I remember telling myself over and over, "Oh, it's so deep and complicated and hard. It's so hard to change." I think two of my favorite words I was telling myself, programming myself.
Yeah.
"Oh, it's hard and it's complicated to make any change in life, and like to make any money, to start from nothing. It's just too hard." That's what I was telling myself. So of course I was like a total poverty case all through my 20s and into my early 30s. When I finally realized the importance of what you're telling yourself, and I literally stopped saying it's hard and complicated, and I started telling myself, "I am sensible and in control of my finances. I'm creating total financial success in an easy and relaxed manner, a healthy and positive way." And that became my experiment. Literally the day I turned 30, I decided to look at my life as an experiment. A phrase, just a single word. I heard somebody described meeting Buckminster Fuller. I'd never met this guy, but he told me, Buckminster Fuller said, when he was in his 20s, he came to a point where he was decided to either commit suicide or look at his life as this unique experiment. And fortunately, he chose the experiment.
No kidding.
And he went around in his 20s speaking to colleges about his 50-year experiment. And I grabbed onto that word the day I turned 30. I said, "I'm going to experiment from now on. My life is going to be an experiment. I'm going to see if affirmations really are powerful. I'm going to test the power of affirmations as part of my experiment. And part of it, and this really appealed to the lazy side of it, because I'd been a musician and an actor. I love those hours. You never did a thing before 1 in the morning. Never. I love those hours. So you just sleep as late as you want. And so I said, okay, I want to create success. Here's my experiment. I'm going to program myself with affirmations. I'm going to see if affirmations, if the word is really as powerful as maybe it is. I'm going to start affirming I'm sensible and in control of my finances. I'm creating total financial success in an easy and relaxed manner, in a healthy and positive way, in its own perfect time, for the highest good of all. That was my whole affirmation. I repeated several thousand times my 30th year.
Mark, could you say that again?
Yes.
I would just love to hear that again.
Yes. I realized when I was 30, what I was telling myself was, I'm a fool with money. I'm out of control. I was telling myself that, and that everything was so hard and complicated. And that's why I lived in a tiny slum apartment. I woke up the day I turned 30 in a state of shock. I couldn't have a party. Somehow, being in my 20s, I felt like a teenager. I'd had a rock band in my late 20s that had fallen apart. But I went for it. I had a band. We did amazing music, but made no money, very little money. We were scrounging every month, a word we used all the time, to come up with rent in this slum apartment, funky part of Oakland, bars on the windows, not a nice place. You would not want to raise a kid in that neighborhood. And I turned 30 in this little apartment, and I started just pacing up and down. And that's the day that changed my life, because I just started, I realized this voice said, you're 30. You're not a kid anymore. What are you going to do with your life? Well, that's a good question. What am I going to do? And I was pacing up and down. And then I remembered a little game I played during a failed back to the land experiment I also tried in my early 20s. But the one thing I learned from there, we were sitting around a fire, and this couple said, let's play this game we play at church camp. Let's imagine 5 years have passed and everything has gone as well as you could possibly imagine. What would your life look like? We all went around the fire. Everybody said something. I was 22 at the time. I do not remember one word of what I said, so it had no impact. But the day I turned 30, I thought, this is a good game to play. Only this time I wrote it down. I took a sheet of paper. I put ideal scene at the top. I imagined being 35. Oh my God, that's like middle-aged. 35. And what would my ideal look like? Much to my amazement, what spilled out is I have a publishing company. I'd sort of worked in a few companies. I knew some things about publishing from a Tibetan center and from another guru in Berkeley I was with a while. But I have a publishing company that's totally successful and cruises along, and I write books, and I record my music, and I have a big white home on the hill in Marin County, California, one of the most beautiful places on earth.
Oh, I love Marin.
It's gorgeous. It's 75% wide open and will remain that way. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
So I wrote my ideal scene. I wrote a whole list of goals. And then, of course, I was totally overwhelmed with doubts and fears. As soon as I began, nearly overwhelmed. And I kept saying, okay, this is my experiment, to go for this. And I kept being inundated with doubts and fears, just almost overwhelmed, like way too much, Mark, way too much. Doubts and fears can be very realistic and rational. It said, you want to start a business and write books and do music and get into real estate. Way too much, Mark. Just pick one thing and focus on that. They said, and I knew whatever I picked, my doubts and fears would just shoot it down,
Yeah.
So I said, no, I'm going back to my ideal. This is my ideal. I want to do it all. Not only that, I want to do it in an easy and relaxed manner. I want to do it. Here's my experiment: to continue to be lazy, continue my musician's hours, sleep as late as I want every day, And my doubts and fears said, impossible, never been done. You must work 60 hours a week. Blah, blah. And I said, okay, here's my experiment. That's how I got around. I said, this is a good experiment. It totally appealed to my lazy side. My lazy side said, yeah, go for this experiment. And I said to my doubts and fears, give me a year for this experiment, a year, maybe 2. And so let me be lazy, but let me start this up. And then the affirmation I came up with that you asked about at the beginning, all this such, then as I realized I was saying, oh, I'm out of control. I'm an idiot with money. I don't understand it. That's why I'm a fool with money. I came up with and wrote down in big letters and carried around with me, I am sensible and in control of my finances. I am creating total financial success in an easy and relaxed manner, a healthy and positive way, in its own perfect time for the highest good of all. Those are the words that worked for me.
Gorgeous.
I got the second half of that from a book by a Unity Church minister named Catherine Ponder that I'd read. She did a bunch of books on prosperity. Yeah, Catherine Ponder. Great name. But that's where I got, in an easy and relaxed manner, a healthy and positive way, in its own perfect time for the highest good of all. I kept saying that over and over. I said it thousands of times in my early 30s. And every time I did, I realized the power of words. You just keep saying easy, relaxed, healthy, positive. Your whole body responds. You're programming your body. Really, to relax and to take it easy. That's one of the best pieces of advice we ever give each other. Take it easy.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. Thanks for resharing that. It really helped to hear your background and to get the piece that you had been using affirmations, but you were using the wrong ones. You had to reprogram them. Exactly. Yeah. You had to rewrite your affirmations.
Yes. I was using powerful negative affirmations. To this day, I keep saying to people, your words are powerful. I have proven that in my life. We know it. Watch what you say. Even watch what you think. I hear people say the most god-awful, horrible things. If I know them, I'll step in and I'll say, cancel. Quit saying it's so hard.
That's great.
Use the word hard. Yeah, I don't know where I got that. Cancel.
I love it.
Delete.
Yeah. There you go.
Quit saying it's hard to succeed. It doesn't have to be hard to succeed. It can be very easy. You can succeed in an easy and relaxed manner if you keep saying that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I years ago read a book by a woman named Florence Scovel Shinn, and there's just only one thing I remember from the book.
Her last name?
Well, besides her name, right? is she does a lot of affirmations, and she was working with somebody. She was teaching somebody how to have more ease with their work. So they came up with this real simple little line that went, "I do wonderful work in a wonderful way. I do wonderful work in a wonderful way." But then they realized later on that, but the financial success wasn't there. So they had to alter it. "I do wonderful work in a wonderful way. I give wonderful service for wonderful pay."
Ooh, that's good.
Wonderful.
I just love that. So I do wonderful work in a wonderful way. I give wonderful service for wonderful pay.
That's where that came from. That was a mystery to me. I encountered an old friend just like 5 years ago that I knew 40 years ago. And I said, we talked and I said, "So what have you been doing for the last 40 years? And she said, "Well, my life kind of paralleled yours. I wandered around in my 20s, not knowing what to do. And then when I turned 30, I read Creative Visualization, which was the first big book I published."
Wow.
And she said, "And I got this affirmation from that book. I do wonderful work in a wonderful way with wonderful people for wonderful pay." She said that, and I thought, wait, I edited that book. That's not in there. I'd never heard that before. But she told me she got it from creative visualization.
Oh.
But that's where she got it. And she said she started when she was 30 saying that over and over and over. And that's exactly what happened. She ended up in Seattle, ended up owning her own business. And she said for 30 years and she finally retired, I think. But she said, I did wonderful work in a wonderful way with wonderful people for wonderful pay.
Oh, lovely.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah. That's great.
You know, what strikes me as especially beautiful and interesting at the moment. Here we are in this point in the conversation, and I'm thinking about the name of our show is Authenticity Show. And not only have we had really a lot of really great sharing, but I'm thinking about the other definition of authentic, which is to be self-authoring. And what you're talking about is being self-authoring. You did it your way in the way that felt really true for you, and you didn't take no for an answer. You made whatever adjustments were necessary so that you could change the narration, change the story, change the script, and of course, your results.
Yes. Oh, I like that. I've never heard that. Self-authoring. You're right. That's a great way to look at it. Right.
Yeah.
We're all writing our life story. So we might as well make it as expansive as possible and as fulfilling as possible.
Yeah. I can relate to what you were saying about feeling a bit like, what am I going to do? You know, just early part of my life was focused on, just getting by. And I had a lot of bad money ideas in my head too, a lot of them. And it took me some reflection and some practice to get that dialogue to change in my head, and also to believe that the desire that I was feeling inside to do what I do now currently was something that deserved a place in my life, a big place in my life, deserved to be fed, it deserved to have the freedom to come out, and that I didn't need to check for how I'm supposed to feel on the inside by checking on the outside with what other people agree with.
Yes.
So I had lots and lots of people telling me, you'll never make it doing that. You can't do this. You can't do that. Making money is hard. There's a lot of competition out there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing is, people didn't believe in me. Well, there were some, but I got a lot of negative belief that I took in. And that's when we sort for our internal feelings by what we see on the outside with other people, that's not a good combination for most stuff.
Nope.
You have to tap into what you really feel and go with it. When I finally did that, it was a huge difference. And then the people who did believe in me, I felt like especially loved by them. And I also felt vindicated for having the desire and the passion to do what I do now. And now I feel like there isn't going to be anything to stop me. I mean, I'm here to do something that's important for me and for the world, and I love it. It's coming from my heart, and it is hard work, but I don't look at it as hard work. I look at it as kind of hard play. Like it's fun efforts that I make, and we get trained to think, oh, you can't fail, and of course you can. Failure can make you stronger. Failure can teach you lessons. You can even reframe that failure as feedback, or you can reframe it as a research. You got your lab coat on, right? Like Buckminster Fuller.
Right.
My lab coat on, you're just doing research. You failed at that. No, I didn't. I was just doing research.
Yes, that's it. That's it. It's just the cost of your education. Every successful person I know has had failures. And in fact, we love to sit around, at night with a glass of wine or something and tell stories of our failures because they're very funny in hindsight. Yeah. To ask successful people, okay, what failures have you had? What's your story? What's the stupidest thing you did what's the most disastrous thing you did? How did you blow the most money or whatever? It's very entertaining. But yeah, it's all our fear of failure. Once we can overcome that fear of failure, do not fear failure. It is just a stepping stone. It's been put in so many different words by so many different people, but you got to find a way to deal with fears. I just had a session with this Scott Stabile, a new author of ours that did a book called Big Love. And he said he looks at fear now. He looks at fear like a little obnoxious 4 or 5-year-old brother that's always pulling at his pant leg. You know, he's not smart at all. And he'll say, don't do that. Don't do that. And he said, okay, kid, I mean, sometimes you're right when you tell me not to run out into a crowded freeway. That's good. Thank you for that. But when you tell me not to write a book, forget it, kid. You know, that's how he deals with fear. I thought that was somehow we've all got to deal with fear, especially fear of failure. And once we can do that, then we're bound to succeed in some brilliant, extraordinary way.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
Well said. Well said. Yeah.
It's great to have your example as another example in the world of someone who you know decided to be authentic and you've made it. You know, you've arrived at a place that feels good to you, where you can support yourself in a positive way, and there's a sense of flow in what it is you do to create it. It's not a big, huge struggle. It's not, you know, a battle against something. You're actually building and moving towards something. And I think that's great. So many people don't have enough examples to point to. So they don't challenge their present paradigm because they just don't have enough people who are authentically sharing how they got where they've gotten.
Right. I sure had very few role models. When I started out, I didn't know of anybody that had success with ease. I couldn't think of anybody. But that became my experiment. I said, I'm going to try it. My doubts and fears, most of my thoughts initially said it would not work. Won't work. My dad was right. You have to work 60 hours a week to start up a company. On my 30th birthday, I talked to him. I said, Dad, I'm going to start a business. And his first response was, well, you know, 80% of businesses fail their first 2 years. That's what he said. And I realized, I said, oh, okay. He's one of those guys I can't share my dreams with.
Right.
You were talking about, you know, your friends that did not believe in you. Yes, and they're mirroring your own doubts and fears. They're mirroring. And if we have just even one friend that believes in us, that's such a tremendous and wonderful thing. We don't need it. I've known people that have not had one person that believed in their dream. I usually had at least one person, like a girlfriend, that said, yeah, you can do it. Usually I had one or two people. But it's true. Most of my friends and my own parents and family were no help at all. They just thought I was bound to fail. Why even try? Why even start a business, Mark? You don't know a thing about business. I'd never taken a course in it. I never, you know, I knew music and acting. That was it. I did not know business. To this day, I don't understand accounting or anything. I have a great CFO who explains things to me over and over because I don't get it. I still don't understand accrual versus I don't, these things. I still don't grasp the concept, and yet I have this multi-million-dollar corporation.
That's great. You know, you remind me of I like to think a lot of biological systems because their biological systems are successful in this world. And so there's a lot we can learn from them. So like, as you're describing, like you don't know much about accounting, but you have somebody who does, it kind of reminds me of the idea of, you know, the liver cells don't know the first thing about how to make insulin. They just leave that to the pancreas. You know, but the whole system works, right? You know, it's like the pancreas has got it. You know, the pancreas doesn't know how to pull toxins out of the blood. That's the liver's job. You know, just let the liver do it. You know, I think sometimes we forget that we're part of this big system where there are others in our system that can handle things to help us. You know, you know, the liver doesn't have to be the pancreas. The pancreas doesn't have to be the liver. You know, so there you go.
I'm very good about delegating. I don't even have to show up at my company anymore. It just keeps on. And that was my dream. That was my ideal from the beginning, that it cruises along like a ship. And in a hammock in the back, with a nice tall
with a pineapple drink, a little umbrella coming out of it.
There's a little, yes, exactly.
Mark, are you doing something soon, like classes or releasing something? Do you have something like projects or things like that you're working on right now that you would enjoy sharing with the listeners?
Yes, you're right. I'm always doing something. So on marcallen.com, Mark with a C, Allen.com, I will keep people. And I do a lot on Facebook, Marc Allen Author. On Facebook, I announce all kinds of things. I am preparing. I just finished a teleconference. I'm doing another one pretty soon called The Power of the Feminine.
Ooh.
And it has 4 sessions. I'm going to do one just on the power of the feminine, what we talked about, where all that creativity comes from and everything. You can look at it that as the feminine side, like we each have a masculine and feminine side. So I'm doing a session just alone, and then I'm bringing in Sark, this wonderful, brilliant woman artist, to talk about the power of the feminine in art and creativity. And then I'm bringing in Ariel Ford, talking about the feminine in relationships.
I've met her.
And then I'm bringing in a man, Trevor Blake, and he and I are going to talk about the power of the feminine in business and career success. So I think it's unique
cool
to have 2 men talking about the power of the feminine in business. So that's my next teleseminar. That's going to be fun.
When does that happen?
I think we just postponed. We were going to start at August 1st, but you know what? It was getting a little bit too much to set up, and then Sark had some problems, and so we postponed it. So it'll be a few months down the road. We're doing it in an easy and relaxed manner. I'm not even sure when, but soon. It's my next project.
That's great that they can. So this is a teleconference. It may be something that goes on for like a few days in a row, or how does that work?
It'll be 4 Thursday nights.
Okay.
Like every Thursday night for 4 weeks. That one. And then I might do what I did before too, is next year do a whole year on the magical path, where every month then we take a chapter. There's 12 chapters in the book, The Magical Path. And every month we focus on that for an entire year. I've done that twice now, and people love it. And I really enjoy it too. So we'll do that as well.
Well, speaking of Magical Path, a little earlier you were talking about having a conversation with the fear, and in a sense it was a transmutation of purpose. Like instead of taking, it's utilizing the purpose underneath that's driving the action rather than allowing it to be as it is. It's a bit like when we have a behavior that is less than ideal, when we ask the question, what's the underlying positive intention of that behavior, we often get a different kind of view on it. Like if you're doing something like, let's just say a bad habit, like smoking, something that's unhealthy, that's offensive to others, etc. When you ask the question, what is this doing for me? Or what is it doing for that person who's smoking? You often get different answers. You get things like, well, this is creating a break in my day from the stress, or this is creating an opportunity to get away from people who are annoying me, or this is creating a feeling of being cool and connecting with other people who are smoking, or whatever it is, social reasons. So those underlying positive intentions are not bad in and of themselves. They're actually good instincts. They're good impulses that are just being satisfied in a way that's less than healthy.
Right.
So if we look at behaviors that way, sometimes it can give you a different kind of a handle on how you might go about changing it, because instead of fighting the whole thing, you're really negotiating with whatever that underlying intention is, and you're giving it a different place to express itself and letting go of the part that's not working. the actual physical behavior. So sometimes you can find a parallel behavior that's more healthy, that satisfies the same intention. And that reminded me a bit of what you were saying, because we have, in the old days, this idea of magic, angels and demons and gods and goddesses and so forth. And there's this idea of casting a circle around you, and you command the demons within the triangle, and you tell them to do your bidding and so forth. But if you look at the structure of your own quote unquote demons, the stuff that emotional problems and emotional stuckness and jealousy and rage and all the things that can be metaphorically attributed to demonology. If you were to call upon the highest space inside of you, the most philosophically true alignment that you can bring in, and then with that clarity, look at your darkness, look at your demons, you might be able to give those very same dark, base, negative aspects of your consciousness a whole new directive. In other words, your job is now to watch for danger. Your job is now to get me motivated to work out more, or to get organized in my home, or your job is to watch out for some behavior or this behavior, that behavior. And instead you're giving this bestial energy, whatever inside of you, something noble to do, rather than letting it run amok and doing whatever the hell it wants.
Yes.
That's great, Carlos. Yeah.
Model, right?
Yeah.
That is so neat. Wow.
It is. So neat. It's similar to a meditation I've done where you bring in, it's based on the voice dialogue work of Helen Sidra Stone that Shakti Gawain got into so much in Living in the Light and all. But you basically just meditate, relax, you bring your conscious awareness there, and then you invite all your sub-personalities in there. So I have the inner magician who runs the show, but you can have whoever you want. It can be that inner wise being that runs the show, or whoever. But I imagine it. You have a big conference table, and you invite your inner child, you invite your inner vulnerable child, your inner creative child, you invite your inner parents, you invite that inner critic, inner skeptic, you invite everybody, and you have a big conference, and your inner magician, or whatever you want to call it, stands up and says, I have a dream, and I want your support in this dream. This is important. Inner critic, I don't want you undermining me. Or all these, you talk, all the dark forces, all that stuff. You give them a personality there, and you ask them to support you in your dream. And specifically, the inner critic, the inner skeptic, I've found I just had to kick out of the room because I haven't found a good reason for skepticism yet. Maybe there is one. Inner critic, I've turned into an ally, because it's really easy to see in writing a book. Like you start to write a book, you write a first sentence, that inner critic immediately says, that's a lousy first sentence. And that's where writer's block comes from. The inner critic is right there. You have to literally say to the inner critic, go, take a break, get out of here, because I need to let my creative self write this. But I'm going to invite you back later, and you're going to be my editor. Inner critics make great editors. So there's a good job for that inner critic. You invite the critic back later. He says, that's a lousy first sentence, and the whole first paragraph's bad. But here, in the middle of the second sentence, that's good. That's where you start. And your critic becomes an editor. So the same in the whole meditation is like what you were talking about, a magic thing. I just imagined sitting down with all your sub-personalities and getting them all to agree to support that dream you have. And you clearly put out that dream. I'm going to create this. I want your support, inner critic. Show me how. You have discriminating wisdom, inner critic. Show me the best steps to take. But don't shoot down my dream.
Yeah.
Support.
Wow. I am very inspired, Mark. I think I'm going to have a board meeting right after this Zoom interview.
Yes.
That's great.
It's
great.
One. It's a good one.
There's some echoes to Napoleon Hill, and his council, his inner council.
I was thinking of that too.
It's really, really cool. And in NLP, we have a technique called it's like a parts party. You're having a party with all your parts, and it's like a council. You have you pick maybe 6 aspects, so it's not too many at a time, and have this negotiation. But Mark, I wanted to offer something on skepticism.
Just a good reason for it.
Yeah, just a thought. Skepticism can be a ward, a protection against being fooled by a trickster. And so maybe the inner skeptic is there working alongside with discernment and alongside that part of you which seeks truth and sees truth and loves truth to help defend against the proverbial wool being pulled over your eyes. So if you were an open-minded skeptic, as we try to be on the show here, there might be a good use for that.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot, Carlos. I always had a feeling I didn't want to kick him out totally, because there must be some useful function for him. So maybe that's it. Yes.
To guard against being tricked, and that it isn't the same as his cousin from the other side of the family called the naysayer. That's different, because a naysayer just needs to say nay to things, and maybe the only purpose for that would be to keep you from going too quickly.
Or in setting up boundaries too.
Yes,
you
true.
Have to say no to people to establish your own boundaries. So there, the naysayer can be very useful.
Yeah, that's great. I always feel energized after we have a wonderful conversation with somebody who just shares some unique little angles in life that causes me to see a few things differently.
Yes.
And you've done that for me, Mark. So I'm feeling very appreciative of you spending this time with us. I'm walking away with all kinds of cool new strategies that I can't wait to go experiment with. I want to run my own experiments now.
Me too. I feel more encouraged after this conversation than when I began, a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too.
My heart is bigger.
That's great to hear. Namaste.
Namaste. All right.
Now,
Whatever. So long. Take it easy.
All right.
Sayonara.
Later, Mark. Okay.
You've been listening to The Authenticity Show with your hosts Carlos Casados and Satch Purcell. Very special thanks to our guest today, Marc Allen. If you'd like to find out more about Marc Allen, you can find his website at marcallen.com. That's Mark with a C, by the way. My name is Oliver Altine. I produce this show, and I also wrote the theme music, which you're listening to right now. The interstitial music this time was Sweet Surrender by Marc Allen. Please subscribe to The Authenticity Show wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, Android Market. You can also find us on social media, the Facebooks, the YouTubes, all the things. Find us wherever you want to find us. We are there. And you can find our website at authenticityshow.com. Thank you for listening, and have an authentic day.